Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just gave up my best bets for this upcoming weekend. Went 6-2 last week. Hopefully, we can continue that streak. So, if you need a couple of good bets, hopefully I can give you those this week. But let's get into some final thoughts as we head into a week 5 that I can't even describe. It is absolutely perfect. It is everything that you want college football to be. We have massive games at every single time slot. We have two night games that, frankly, I'm going to have to find another massive TV so I can get two big TVs. They both deserve massive TVs for for these matchups at night. It's going to be incredible. And then when you look at the undercard, it's games that would be the biggest game in any other weekend of the entire year. It is incredible what we are getting into this upcoming weekend. And let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll start with the two, let's say, warm up games. I don't want to disrespect it all, but let's say warm up games, and then we'll get into the big two right in a second. But USC, Illinois, one game that is just so massive for so many different reasons. And frankly, you look at a USC team, I think a lot of people aren't taking them fully seriously, and I understand why. The defense has not been good enough in previous years. The offense has always been something that you've been able to, at the very least, rely on somewhat. Now, last year was a weird anomaly for those Lincoln Riley teams, but they seem to be back to that level. They're playing really, really good offensive football. For Illinois, you got to get off the mat. If you don't get off the mat here, it is not going to get easier the rest of the way. I believe you get Penn State here pretty soon. I believe you get Ohio. I'm forgetting what the schedule is. Apologies. It does not get easier for Illinois the rest of the way. It is definitely going to be a huge battle, and one that if USC finds a way to win, they're right there with a Michigan, with a Indiana, with someone that wants to be that fourth team from the Big Ten, because I think everyone feels that it's going to be Oregon, it's going to be Penn State, it's going to be Ohio State. If Ohio State loses to Washington this weekend, everything is on the table, where you have Washington, USC, maybe Illinois, Indiana, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, all of these teams that are very much vying for those spots in the CFP, and plenty of time to figure all of that out. But you got to start on the right foot. Illinois started on the very wrong foot last week, and this is a game where they can find their footing or they can fall on their face and really not get up for the rest of the season. And they look at a year where they thought they were going to the CFP, they might be fighting for 7 or 8 wins by the end of this thing. And for USC, it's a moment where Lincoln Riley can kind of turn the narrative on its head. Now, people are still going to question that defense. There's no question about that. But at the end of the day, I do think there's going to be a little bit of an opening here where you win this game. At the very least, people are looking at you as a real CFP contender, and you got a schedule that you can really handle going forward. As far as injuries go, you got a couple of injuries in that secondary for Illinois, a couple of leaders that are not going to be able to play in this game, and Jacoby Lane on the other side for USC is not going to play. So what other wide receiver, Mekhi Lemon, is going to be a piece of this football game, but who else can step up for USC on the outside to attack a very questionable, very thin Illinois back end? LSU Ole Miss, the game that frankly should get top billing this weekend. If it was on any other weekend, pretty much of the entire year, this would be the main game because it's number 4 against number 13. It was a game last year that went to overtime. It's a game that is introducing a quarterback to the world that no one knew the name of going into this season, that was coming up from D2 Ferris State, that the only way you knew this name is if you were really paying attention to the transfer portal. I knew the name. I didn't know he was this good. I promise you that. He has played incredible, incredible football through a couple of weeks. I believe had 400 plus total yards in both games, went for over 100 rushing in both games. I tend to believe that's not going to happen in this one, if I'm being totally honest with you. And I think it's a huge moment for both these coaches. I think Lane Kiffin is looking at this one and saying, if we win this one, we are firmly on our way to the CFP. Because you look back at last year, a couple of mistakes in that LSU game changes that entire season. And obviously, the Kentucky game and the Florida game obviously played a big role in that as well. But this was a moment for them to totally take control and take over the SEC, and they left it on the table. This is another moment where you can go into a game where the LSU offense isn't lighting anything on fire recently. They're definitely struggling. If Garrett Nussmeier is healthy, I feel confident they can find a way to put something together, but this is a good opening for Ole Miss. It's about as good of an opening as you're going to have against this LSU team going forward. You have a quarterback that, yes, they now have tape on, but you still don't fully know the tendencies of. You're at home. You have a quarterback on the other side that probably isn't 100%, probably is getting closer, but probably not 100% quite yet. I think you got a moment here if you're Ole Miss, and if you leave it on the table, I think it could be the moment that you remember at the end of the day when you're number 14 or 15 in that final CFP poll for LSU. You lose it, and all the goodwill that Brian Kelly has built up around that fan base goes away in a hurry. I can absolutely promise you that. And they're looking at the rest of their schedule thinking, do we even have a shot to get back into the CFP race because we beat a Clemson team that not proven to be the win that we thought it was. So at the end of the day, it's a massive one for narrative. It's a massive one for the talk outside the game. It's a massive one for the Kiffin family and the Weeks family. Let's just put it on the table there. But including the Weeks family, Wes Weeks is going to play in this football game. Caden Durham seems like he's kind of working his way towards playing, someone they absolutely need if you're LSU. And Trey'Dez Green looks like he's likely to play for Ole Miss. They look relatively healthy. A couple of injuries at that wide receiver position, but nothing super aggressive. They absolutely are rolling into this game, and they could use a huge one here. Now we get to the big boys. Oregon at Penn State. Penn State still favored by 3.5 in this one. It can't be said enough how big this game is. It is a massive, massive moment for James Franklin, and I get it. It is not a game that is going to knock you out of the CFP. It is not a game that is going to kill James Franklin. James Franklin can go on to beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten, get into the CFP, and become the coach that we've been waiting on him to be. The reality of the matter is, it's never going to get better than this weekend. The opportunity is never going to get better than a young quarterback going on the road for his very first time at night for a whiteout when you have all of the guys returning. You have all of the veteran talent. You have all of the steady heart rates, or at least you should, going into this football game. You're going up against a coach that is going to give you everything that you can handle. I can promise you that. Dan Lanning doesn't go into games thinking we can lose it and go into the CFP. He doesn't care about house money. He plays every game as far as he needs to. He plays every game as aggressive as he needs to. I've gone back and forth on this pick. Frankly, I had Oregon picked until about 30 minutes before I did that prediction show. I flipped to Penn State for a couple of reasons. I think Penn State can run the ball, and I really do think this group is different. I think mentally this group is a little bit different than the past groups. Now, Drew Aller is still a question mark. I think this is the moment where he steps up. I think this is the moment where he puts some of that narrative to bed that he can't step up in big games. He makes some big-time throws. The receivers that they brought in make some big-time plays, and I think Penn State gets it done. I don't think it's necessarily super pretty. I don't think it's going to be perfect. I think you find a way to get the win that you've been waiting on for a very long time. And then people turn their attention and say, well, now you got to beat Ohio State. That's the nature of the world that you live in if you're Penn State. But I think you get the win here. You're going to have to deal with Noah Whittington coming back from injury at running back for Oregon. Very talented, just a guy that can change the game on a dime. Pretty much no more needs to be said there. A guy that can totally change the game. Got to make sure you keep him under wraps. But at the end of the day, I'm going to take Penn State in this one. It's everything for Penn State fans. It's everything for James Franklin. I get it. The CFP does not factor in nearly as much as it used to in these types of games. That doesn't matter here. It's all about pride. It's all about James Franklin finding a way to get this one done, and Penn State finding a way to get on top at night in a whiteout. It's going to be special. I think Penn State gets it done, but if they don't, we got tough conversations to have on Monday. Alabama on the road at Georgia. This one's always special. There's no two ways about that. Another one that I changed very late on, I had Alabama picked until about 30 minutes before I started recording. I had Alabama being Alabama and just beating Georgia the way that they always do. I flipped late for a couple of reasons. I think this Georgia team has a competitive character that they haven't had over the past couple of years. And that doesn't mean anything. That really doesn't mean anything, at least tangibly, in this football game. But it does. When you talk about a guy in Gunnar Stockton that goes on the road to Tennessee for his very first time for a Tennessee fan base that felt like this was the moment, felt like that was the moment where they take down Georgia, he did not blink. He did not miss a beat. He always made the throw that they needed him to make. He did everything that they needed him to do in that football game. You have a Georgia football team that has a lot of players that have seen success, but haven't been a part of that success, and they badly want to. I think a Chris Cole is going to be huge in this football game. I think on the other side, a Quay Rousseau is going to be huge in this football game. A Tim Keenan coming back from injury, Jam Miller coming back from injury, Jamarian Latham coming back from injury. It's going to be huge in this football game, and I just think these two defenses are going to fly around. We talked about it in the Penn State-Oregon game. This one isn't about the CFP. Both these teams are firmly in the mix now. Alabama getting to their second loss, absolutely. Will put them on a little bit more of a tightrope. There's no two ways about that, but this one goes beyond the CFP. This one's about Georgia getting over that mental hurdle. This is about Alabama continuing to define what the SEC is year in and year out, regardless of if they are on an up year or a down year. They are the dominant team in the SEC. That's what they want to prove. Georgia wants to prove that this is officially their conference now. With Nick Saban gone, yeah, last year happened, but you find a way to win this football game. You go on to win your second SEC title in a row. It's Georgia's conference going forward, and Alabama's time has kind of come to an end, at least as the dominant team in the SEC. But at the end of the day, this one's about everything. It's about family rivalries where you have a sister that goes to Alabama and a brother that goes to Georgia. This is about Kirby Smart getting over the hump against the old team that he used to work for. This is everything for that area of the country. It's going to be a massive matchup, and I think this one is going to be downright special the way the one last year was. And then just some final thoughts. Ohio State, Washington. I just love this football game. I think everyone's going to be locked in on this football game more than they thought they were going into the weekend, if I'm being totally honest. I think this one is downright special. I think these two very well could have everything to do with what the Big Ten is going forward, as much as Oregon Penn State could, frankly. Because if Washington wins this football game, then Ohio State's fighting an uphill battle. If Ohio State's able to win, Washington's trying to find a way to battle back in, knock off a couple of guys later in the season. But it's a huge moment for those two football teams. Auburn, Texas A&M. This one just has a weird energy about it. Auburn comes off a game where it's just about how do you respond to a game that, frankly, you probably should have won in a lot of different ways. And it's a moment where Auburn's been quite a few times, maybe not in this context, but at the end of the day, you've been in the spot where you're coming off a game where you probably should have won, going into a game where you're not going to be favored. Can they find a way to get it done? I think it's going to be an absolute fist fight. I think A&M gets away with one here, but I think it's going to be a fist fight late in this one, and I think it's going to be really fun to watch that one unfold. For Indiana, Iowa, Iowa's got to come into this one thinking they can get the upset. Now, the worry that I do have is, can they remotely pass the ball? They scored 38 points. They threw the ball 18 times. I don't know how you do that, but at the end of the day, they were able to do that against Rutgers last week. Indiana's got to win this one. And if they're able to keep their foot on the gas pedal, they will get it done. They'll absolutely dominate this team, and they'll move into probably that fourth spot in the Big Ten that we've talked about ad nauseum at this point. Is a hotly debated topic right now. We'll see if Indiana can jump into that spot this weekend. And then Tennessee, Mississippi State. This one reeks, man. This one reeks of an upset. This one reeks of a game that you're going to be absolutely tuning into deep into into the Penn State Oregon game or the Alabama Georgia game. You're going to be making sure you have an eye on Tennessee Mississippi State, because I just think this one comes down to the wire. I said coming into the season, Mississippi State is going to clip two teams this year. They're going to find a way to get two teams. They're going to find a way to trip up a couple of them. They already did it to Arizona State. Can they do it to Tennessee here? Could they do it to a team later in the season? I just think there's an opening here. Now, Tennessee, they got to be able to find get their wits about them coming off that loss to Georgia. But at the end of the day, I think Mississippi State is a lot more live here than some people are giving them credit for. I think we got a good one coming in Stark Vegas. It's an incredible week. I can't say enough about this weekend. This weekend is absolutely special in every sense of the word. You got two matchups that could very well be national championship previews. You got another matchup that, frankly, could very well be that as well with LSU Ole Miss. It is a game that is going to define so many different narratives. There will be narratives that were created this weekend. There will be upsets this weekend. There will be narratives that are torn down by a James Franklin or a Kirby Smart or an Alabama and Kalen DeBoer. Everyone saying they're dead. They go into Athens and get a win. They are definitely no longer dead. There is so much on the table this upcoming weekend. You have the Big Four, Big Two technically, with Penn State, Oregon, and Ohio State, and Alabama, Georgia. Then you got LSU, Ole Miss. You got USC, Illinois, two ranked matchups. Then let's just go through this. You got Ohio State, Washington, FSU, Virginia tonight, TCU, Arizona tonight, USC, Illinois, Notre Dame, Arkansas, Auburn, A&M, Indiana, Iowa, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Arizona, Iowa State, and so much more. This is a weekend where get as many TVs as you possibly have, put them in your place, get a very, very comfortable seating arrangement, and let it happen. It's going to be incredible. There's going to be upsets. There's going to be a lot of movement in these conferences. We're going to find out a lot about new teams, and a lot of CFP spots, or at the very least, are going to be penciled in this upcoming weekend. It is going to be massive. It's going to be everything that we want it to be. Strap in, buckle up. It is going to be incredible. Thank you so much for tuning in to another week of great shows of the Just Another College Football Podcast. We will be back on Monday to break it all down, and frankly, I think that one's going to be pretty long because I think this weekend's going to be downright special. We will break it all down on Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please do like, subscribe, comment. Means the absolute world to me. But thanks again, and I will see you guys on Monday.